Okay, so continuing on, let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into what actually happens on the instrument when we do a pulse. Um, from our 20 volts with the 2450, a 10 amp pulse from the 2461, and there's our setup. Okay, and so where we left off in the previous video was verifying with the oscilloscope, and as well as on the source meter, you can see a similar outcome in terms of the current and the voltage that occurs kind of here right at the end is probably where we want to take our measurement in both cases. So let's take a little closer look at what happened on the instrument when we did all that button pushing to do that setup. So if I switch over to my instrument, right now I'm just on I've rebooted it, so I'm on the power on factory default behavior here with it. And so if I click that menu button, and then if I put it in that reading table view I like, and I hit the trigger, basically, nothing's going to happen here. And that's because I hit the menu and I go under the trigger button and the configure, there's nothing there anymore. Okay, so what I'm trying to imply to you is that when we went through all this, the button pushing to do the source I, digitize V, etc., it applied various setups on there. And what I did before I powered down before was I created a setup. So you can just do create, clear it out, give it a name, push OK, and then it dumps you back to this screen. There's no other outward manifestation it did anything. So what you do, hit the menu, and then under manage, you can see your scripts. So that's the RDS on that I saved. If I have a thumb drive, then I can just push it over there, and the content of that are the commands that I'm going to use. Say if I'm going to control this thing from LabVIEW or Python or what have you. But I can just reload that configuration here. So I can bring my configs on the thumb drive, or I can have them stored on the instrument. And okay, so now menu, if I come under configure, now I have some content there. I have trigger blocks, and just kind of walking through it, it says it's going to clear the buffer. And then it's recalling some configuration lists. And as our names here kind of imply, there's one for the measuring, use 4-wire, use the digitizers for voltage, use a certain measure range, etc. And then there's one for the sourcing. So use the 10 amp range, use the pulse mode of the 10 amp range, etc., etc. Next one, turn the output on. That's the blue light. We start our measurements, and then I'm going to scroll down with the actual instrument there. Start our measurement. This delay would be if we wanted some pre-pulse, if we wanted to look at the quiescent values before we start our sourcing. Block 6 is the pulse output state, so it starts our 10 amp pulse there. It has a constant delay, turns the pulse off. There's the pulse off time, and then block 10 stops the infinite digitization, and then we're going to turn our blue light off. And then last one is it's just going to branch up. It says go up to the 0 block, so go back to idle. Okay, very easy. So if I hit the here, let me apply my gate voltage manually from the 2450, and then let me put this in my reading table view, and there's our data. Okay, so now if I revisit this idea similar to what we had on the oscilloscope, where maybe the important bit of it is just 100 microseconds worth of data, both the V and the I, kind of right before the pulse turns off. So first of all, this long trail, I don't need it for that measurement. It's a great peace of mind that I've got a well-formed pulse during this measurement. Being able to do this, um, but I really don't need it for the whole for the RDS measurement itself. So kind of a simple modification we could do to this trigger block immediately is let me scroll down on the instrument itself, and we start the measurements. This is the pre-pulse delay, pulse off, and then this 5 milliseconds, and then we stop measuring. So I'm just going to blow that away, delete it, and then come back to here, reading table view, and I'm going to press the trigger button on the front. And yeah, and I've discovered kind of a firmware wonkiness here once I modify that in my little reading table view. But that's okay. That's an excuse to show you something else here. So full screen on the graph. Let me add the source values of that, and there they are together. And what we really want to do is probably get some sort of an algorithm to just look at, again, the data, the buffer elements on those two curves between the cursors. Even I could really go crazy here with the trigger model and use some timers and just only measure during that 100 microseconds or whatever time interval that I deem most appropriate for my measurement. So there's a lot of options here of how to implement this depending on whether this is a production test and you want high throughput, or whether you want to do look at the shape of it somewhat, etc., etc.